Hey guys, and welcome to episode 2 of the AM Film Podcast. I'm Brad Evans, and with me this week we have the editor of theangrymicrowave.com, Callum Moorin.
Hello, everybody. How are you today, Bradley?
I'm very well. How are you?
I think I said that last time. I'm good. Thanks.
You did, and that sounded a bit more enthusiastic this time. We'll jump straight into things today. So, in the first section of the show, as always, we talk about what's in cinemas at the moment and what we've seen. There's not much out really at the moment that's fresh, but we've seen one new film between us in the last couple of days. Callum, you go first. What did you see and what did you think?
So I saw Burnt, which is Bradley Cooper's new film. And it's a very mixed film. First of all, it's got way too much of London in it. I mean, I was surprised it wasn't like funded by the BFI or something and they had to have like 30 minutes of London shots because it really milks it. But it's a very average film.
Right.
It's literally aimed at that like middle-aged market. I mean, my mum wants to go and see it. So, okay. which basically kind of gives you the idea like who it's aimed at. It's aimed at that audience. It's not pushing barriers at all. Bradley Cooper's quite good in it, but there's one great scene where there's a breakdown somewhere in the film. It's not a spoiler. It's kind of guessable. I mean, the whole plot's very guessable.
All right. Is that a problem with the film then? That it's a bit predictable, a bit by the numbers?
It is, but you kind of expect that with that kind of film. It's not overly. I mean, there are like some tiny twists and turns, but it's not like a giant plot twist at the end.
Right.
That's good. The cast is quite big names, but it's one of those films where the people turn up for like 2-3 minutes. I mean, Emma Thompson's in it. She plays a psychiatrist kind of woman. And again, she's good for the time she's there, but she probably filmed it all in a day. It was one of those kind of spots. Okay. Sienna Miller's also in it. I mean, it's a very talented cast. No one particularly is bad in it. Mm-hmm. It's just a very mundane film. And also, because like the film's basically about food and about this chef who gets thrown like millions of pounds to make a new restaurant, even though he's a drug addict. Because that makes sense in a breakdown before. He rocks up at his hotel and he's given loads of money. So, but never watch a cooking film on an empty stomach.
Right. Okay, top tip.
I did make that mistake. So overall, right. I would give this a miss. It's basically a Netflix film, like you would put on and just like happily watch and chill too.
Right.
But,
that's terrible.
Are you interested in watching this or
a bit of Netflix and chill? No. Well, that kind of leads me on to my one. It was a choice between seeing Burnt and Scouts Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. Right. Now, Burnt is at the moment rated a 6.7, and a Scouts Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. That's a really long-winded title, isn't it? Right. I'll call it Scouts for the sake of me not looking like a prat. That's rated, I think, at a 6.5. Now, what I was thinking going into the cinema was, do I watch a 6.7 rated drama or do I watch a 6.5 rated comedy? I went for the comedy because I think if a drama is around the 6 mark, it doesn't really hit the spot, whereas a comedy is very hit and miss with some people. So I knew there was a chance that I could enjoy it. And I surprised myself with the notes that I was writing about the film afterwards and just how much I actually did enjoy this film. It's not like one of the best comedies like in the last 10 years or anything. It's not fantastic, and again, the problem with this is that it is by numbers. You can predict every single jump scare, which is good because I'm a little bitch when it comes to,
Oh, there's jump scares in it. I didn't realize that. I thought it was a straight up comedy.
Yeah, there are some jump scares, but it's so obvious when it's about to come up because the music dies down and you're like, okay, well then he's not alone in that room kind of thing. But it's hilarious. There are many laugh out loud moments. And there's only about 10 of us in the cinema, which is a bit strange, especially for a comedy, because if no one laughs, then it's just an awkward hour and a half. I laughed on my own during some scenes, and I didn't laugh, and some other people did. Don't go into this expecting another Shaun of the Dead. That's a really unfair comparison, because a zombie comedy, right, is a genre in itself, and there's more than one zombie comedy, but obviously Shaun of the Dead's the one that everyone thinks of, which is fair enough because it's the best one out there. But don't go in expecting that because it's not on that level. Like I said, it is by the numbers, not too many twists and turns. The 3 main lads are hilarious. They've got great chemistry, and they actually made it. But at the beginning, they make it like really, like the whole point is that being a scout, like they're way too old to be scouts. That's kind of the running joke. But at the end, they make it seem really cool. and because all the things that they use to fight off these zombies come into play in like the last act of the film, and it's actually, you know, you're like, yeah, I would be a bloody good scout. I can fight off zombies.
So basically, like one of the main things that I was worried about in this kind of films with kid actors, always like it's never the best kind of film because they're so young and they haven't had time to craft their skill. What was it a problem having young actors, or were they surprisingly good?
It was a problem when it came down to doing some of the heart-to-heart scenes, as it were, because obviously you do need some drama in there, and some of that didn't quite hit. And some of the beats weren't quite on point, but the comedy they've done well, and I think if you're nailing the comedy in a film like this, like their timing's spot on. You know, you're not really going wrong. Like I said, it's not a fantastic film. It's not a must rush out to go watch. But if you can watch it with a group of friends, you know, perhaps a little bit tipsy. Not that I would recommend going to the cinema drunk, but if you want to go to cinema with a group of friends, then you'd have a good time. You wouldn't feel like you wasted your money, put it that way.
Who's the film aimed at? Is it aimed at a younger audience, or is it just like anyone?
I was very surprised to find out afterwards it was rated 15, because this should be a rated R. It's definitely not. If I had a younger brother that was about 15, I would be a little bit. This is a little bit, you know. There is one very, no spoilers, but a very graphic sex act that involves a zombie, right? In fact, there's two, and it's kind of. Do you really want to be suggesting things like that, or you know, displaying things like that to a 15-year-old? So I was surprised that it wasn't rated 18. But it's very much at our kind of age range.
Okay, I look forward to seeing it because it's either that or Burn. I think I'm gonna have a better experience.
I feel going off what you said, if anyone had to, well, no one has to go out to the cinema, but they had to make a choice between those two films, I'd recommend Scouts. So new topics is what we're talking about now. News topics. God, I'm talking about bears. So this week is the week of trailers. No surprise, we are going to be talking about a few of the Star Wars trailers that have been released, because there is a international trailer as well as a TV spot, and the new Warcraft trailer was released. Callum, you have literally 5 minutes ago watched the Warcraft trailer for the first time. Let me know what you think.
Unfortunately, I did just see it. It's
Right.
so first of all, to like set down the groundwork, I never played World of Warcraft, but I kind of understand where people are coming from. Basically what the film is. For me, it's trying to bridge the gap from basically getting an audience of World of Warcraft fans to like a Lord of the Rings kind of attempt film and try and merge the two into one.
Right.
But I'm just a bit confused. It like, first of all, the CGI really badly stood out from the like real world shots.
Right.
And you could tell where it was placed on top. Like that was one of the main problems with Hercules, Dwayne Johnson's Hercules. I just thought like the CGI didn't mix, and for this it hasn't really mixed yet. But then again, that may improve by the time it comes out, because it's got another 6 months. And we saw the Jurassic World, like every time we got a new trailer, the visuals were actually being improved every single time. So so that may improve. But for me, it just, I kind of think the more you know about World of Warcraft, the more you'll get out of this film by far. Like seeing the lore and all the story being explored and all the characters. But for someone that hasn't seen it, it's quite daunting to step into personally. Right.
No, I'm in the same boat as you in that I've never played Warcraft or World of Warcraft, or WoW, as some people call it. Right. I've had friends that are really into it and really love it, and they've got high expectations for this film. And I feel like that's going to be a privilege for us going into it, is that we don't have that expectation. And I think that's a good thing, because what I first thought was, when I saw this trailer, was that it looks like a video game adaptation should be looking like. I actually felt like it was a cinematic version of a really long cutscene, which I think's a good thing. Like it's not been bogged down with this ultra dark, let's be gritty. It feels quite light. It feels like I said, just a long drawn out cutscene, and I like that. But then I rewatched it a second time, because I had no idea really what the story was, other than are they orcs? Need to work with the humans for survival. But it's the first trailer, it's a teaser trailer. My question to you is, do you think they released it at the wrong time if the CGI, which it looks like the case is isn't fully finished. If it's 6 months away, do we need a trailer right now?
Well, this film's been in post-production for I think nearly over a year now. I mean, it was filmed I think maybe a year or 2 years ago. Because there's been like all this footage coming out at like all these conventions, like private screenings, and there was a big leak about 6 months ago, which I saw, and it was basically more of the giant guy with the teeth. It was just him speaking. I do think the marketing's important, like especially to launch it now. I mean, you've got so many people going to the cinema over the next couple of months. I mean, like you want your trailer in front of Star Wars, you want your trailer in front of Batman vs Superman, and start that marketing machine 6 months before. I think was actually quite a late thing for that kind of film because it's such a big budget thing. I thought there'd be way more teasers, like throughout a year rather than the 6 months. So whether it should have. In terms of graphics, it shouldn't have, but in terms of PR, I think it needs to be in cinemas and to get that hype around it.
I don't think any of us are saying that it's a bad trailer. It's not looking like it's going to be a bad film. In fact, all it has to be, to be the best video game adaptation to movie is a good film. It just doesn't have to be a mess. But I mean, maybe it's not really aimed at us if we're not one of the millions, because there are millions of players of this game. So maybe we're not the target audience. But I mean, I'm interested, but I didn't rush out to watch it straight away. I mean, like you've only just seen it. Like it's not anything that's on our priority, but they do have 6 months to change that.
One of these things with this film is that I don't really know again who it's aimed at, because I mean, if there is a big leak of this film onto like the Pirate Bay, one of those sites, I feel like this film is going to suffer massively because that audience is very tech savvy and probably like it's quite a serious matter, because I think they're really relying on the core fan base to go out and support this film. Because I mean, would you take your child to go and watch this? I mean, I don't think you would.
How old's my child in this situation?
Well, let's say like 10 to 12. I mean,
right.
Unless they're invested in the game, I think it's quite daunting.
Yeah.
Of a film to go into if you don't know anything about the lore.
The sad thing is, it's got shades of The Hobbit written over it, and I don't just mean in terms of, the kind of the format, as it were, like the structure of the piece. I feel visually it's quite similar to The Hobbit, and that was my main problem with those films. Was the graphics. It just didn't feel right. I was watching it in the cinema, and I was a mug, so I watched all three of them in the cinema, and I felt like I was watching something that was created, in an editing lab, and not, with a bunch of creatives. But like we said, we're early days. We can't really pick apart the graphics too much, I do feel, because Kick-Ass 2 had ridiculously bad green screen in the first trailer of that film. So.
Well, you mentioned The Hobbit. I think one of the crucial things is whether this film will take itself too seriously. I mean, The Hobbit had humour in it. I think that humour kind of saved you quite a lot of the times from being bored in what was like a 2.5, 3 hour epic. So I kind of think that this needs to have humour in it somewhere, because it seems to be taking itself very seriously. And that's a hell of a commitment and gamble to go into with a new franchise and just play it completely straight.
I must have missed the humour in The Hobbit. But anyway, moving on to viewers' questions. Every week we ask you guys to submit your questions, and we will talk. We will discuss the questions that you give us. We normally take 2 to 4. This week we have 3. The first one comes from Sam, who writes, "I recently watched Battle Royale and realised that The Hunger Games is just a modern-day blockbuster copy. Question: is it possible for new films to have totally unique plots that hasn't already been done before?" I've got quite strong feelings on this, so I'm going to let you go first.
It's very different between copying something, thinking something's familiar, and then just having shades of it in. I mean, it's a very grey subject between whether things are completely unique or not. I mean, like you could say Star Wars isn't unique, but Star Wars is unique as a whole. It's basically bringing those things and making a different take on it. Because I really don't think there's many filmmakers out there who go to copy something. I mean, are you telling me that the Hunger Games author from before was watching Battle Royale, which I'm not even sure was out then, and then going, we need to do this, that, and this? I think it's purely coincidences. There's basically only a finite amount of like really large ideas out there, and it's just a coincidence. So what do you think?
I think that I'm kind of going to answer this in 2 parts. Firstly, I think some people get confused with a unique plot and a unique genre, and that's not what Sam's talking about, so we'll forgive him. Right, that's not what he's asking. But just going back to what I was saying about Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. A lot of people were comparing that, saying that we've seen it before because of Shaun of the Dead. Well, we haven't. It's just in the same genre. That doesn't mean it's not a unique plot. I mean, it wasn't a unique plot anyway, but people were judging it going in before it, saying we've seen something similar. Hollywood never gives us these fresh ideas, which leads me on to my second point, is that we actually do get quite a lot of films each year that have unique plots, that have unique way of doing things. The problem is people aren't comfortable with experiencing things that are new, and those are the films that flop. I mean, you look at Steve Jobs, which we'll talk about a little bit later. That film's, in fact, no, we'll save that for later. We'll save that for later. But like, we'll see people do things in a different way that we've never seen before, but nobody goes out to see it because they're afraid of what they're not comfortable with. I mean, look at Interstellar. A lot of people don't like that because it wasn't really anything they've seen before. I mean, the big Hollywood ending would be he goes back to his daughter on Earth and they live the rest of their lives together. I won't say what the ending is because no spoilers, but that doesn't happen. So people weren't people weren't comfortable when Nolan took that step to do something that was original and was unique.
But you say that like Inception came before then, and Inception was such
I meant
huge...
Interstellar.
No, I mean before that.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
Inception was such a unique property, and that was awarded at the box office for being that. So I kind of get what you mean, and I think as films getting bigger and wider subject areas, I think it's diversifying more, and people are willing to take more risks and stuff. I mean, the only reason why Inception was made was as a gift to Christopher Nolan for how well The Dark Knight did financially.
Yeah.
But again, with this, I mean, there's been 24 Bond movies that basically have had the same plot but different variations.
Yeah.
So clearly there's different takes on things, because you couldn't have 24 films exactly the same. But if you read the synopsis, they're basically all the same. So I kind of think it's how you tackle an idea and what angle you're going to with the idea from for that.
And people will pay for what they feel like they know. People will pay if they know what experience they're going in for. It is hard to market a film to make it feel unique, because that does put a lot of people off. But it's good that people like Sam are kind of picking up on older films that are pretty much identical in structure, at least, with modern films, because one, it means that people are going back and getting a broader film knowledge, and it also means that people are going to stop paying for things that they've seen before, which should be a bit of a wake-up call to the studios.
I don't think blockbusters are basically can't take a risk, but if you look out further enough, there's plenty of films that really are pushing the boundaries, coming up with completely unique things. I mean, with Kickstarter and GoFundMe, there's so many opportunities for quite well-financed films to go out in those directions. I mean, even if you go back in the catalogs of early directors, you've got all of those films there which completely are original ideas. I mean, Memento by Nolan again. It's such a different film, which I don't think really has been made before. So if you go back and look at the early films and on the wider internet, you'll find much more unique kind of takes. But for those big blockbusters, I mean, you're risking hundreds of millions of dollars, and are you really going to put that in an idea that may not work?
Yeah, which leads us on to the conversation that we won't have, but this is why so many sequels get made. So many reboots, because people know what they're getting themselves in for and they'll pay for that. Anyway, on to question 2 comes from Jamie, who writes, the use of I love you in films such as Spectre. Do you think there is an unnecessary use of it? Can you show instead of tell? Now, I think you certainly can show emotions and show connections between characters. The issue with what I have with what he's saying here in Spectre is that whole relationship actually felt a bit forced, and so the audience actually needed to hear the I love you as a bit of a reinforcement, because otherwise the stakes wouldn't be so high towards the third act of the film. So yeah, I mean, you can show instead of tell. Most directors and writers do tend to work that in there, because that's primarily what film is. But what do you think on the subject?
I kind of think that I love you doesn't really need to be said. I think it's mainly the chemistry between the two. In Bond, I felt like James Bond was caring for her most of the time. I mean, it kind of flipped. I mean, they got together. I don't really feel that, but it's basically the chemistry. The chemistry means much more to an audience, and the body language, everything else, rather than the words "I love you." I mean, that can just be written in a script and just said anyway. But unless the chemistry on screen is there, I think those words don't really matter. and they feel forced. I mean, like the chemistry wasn't really a love relationship in Bond, and that's why it felt a bit out of place towards the end when that happens.
I think we can both agree that the greatest use of "I love you" was in Star Wars. Then Han Solo just turned around and was like, "I know." Like,
That's what I mean. Like,
for that instance, it actually needs to be there because that was the whole point of the scene. You can't show that. You have to actually have that verbal communication.
but that was a choice in the script, not a need of a script. Which in Bond, it was a need to have that
It
in.
was an idea.
Rather than Star Wars, I mean, that was in the second of 3 films, and they had like another film and a half to explore that relationship.
And they did so beautifully. And the final question of the day comes from Mason, who writes, your view on the oversaturation of superhero films. Is this the next genre to go out of the way, like the Western?
Again, I kind of think it's like the other thing. It's basically like one idea of a superhero film. There's so many different kind of like takes on a superhero film. I mean, you got the Iron Man action film, you got the Captain America like political like thriller. You've got the kind of like Hulk, which is kind of emotional. I mean the Hulk in the films. We're not talking about the outcast Marvel film. But there are so many subgenres within superhero films now. And again, like we were saying before, like these films need to be big budget to work. So it's like they need to be safe bets. It's just going to go the way of the Western. I don't really think so because this trend has like lasted like nearly 20 years now. I mean, early 2000s we were starting to see this. It's going to be quite a slow process for it to go away. But I kind of think they're here to stay. Although Star Wars may take over in kind of space and replace the superhero films of space. Because I mean, Avengers didn't have a great opening earlier this year. Well, it had a great, but not as in terms of Avengers. So I kind of think Star Wars will make it more space films instead of superhero films, but I think they're here for the long haul, personally.
I think that the phrase oversaturation is just down to what your personal thoughts are. Like, there's no stats to say that it's oversaturated because, let's face it, the superhero film is its own genre. And if you talk about oversaturation, even if we get 10 superhero films a year, which we don't yet, if we get like 10 superhero films a year, how many rom-coms do we have a year? How many horrors? You know, how many action adventures? You know, how many, crime thrillers? It's a genre. And I believe there is no oversaturation. We'll find out when there is, because people will stop going to the cinema and paying hundreds of millions and billions of dollars each year to go see these films. So I think oversaturation it completely depends on how you look at it. I don't think there is an oversaturation. Will it go the way of the Western? No, just because it's like you said, it's been around for a couple of decades now, and I feel like we're not even at its peak yet. I mean, you look at the interest that people have in Batman v Superman. I mean, that film is hyped to shit, right? And people are going to go out and force and watch this because it's something new. I mean, if it was oversaturated, we're going back to what we said about original plots and original ideas. We haven't actually seen that before. The scary thing is, like, we're still here compared to where we can be with the stories that superhero movies can tell. But I guess that's a question to be really talking about in the next 5 years. I think the next 5 years are going to be key.
I do think, like, up until now, Marvel have owned the superhero genre. I mean, you've had like Fantastic Fours, but they're basically like not bringing in big money. And it's Marvel that have had every single blockbuster. So they've been careful to pace it as like 2, maybe 3 films a year. So I do think in the next couple of years, we'll see where it will go, because DC, I think, are planning on releasing maybe 2 per year. I mean, we've got 2 next year. We've got Batman vs Superman and the Suicide Squad. So I do think the next year
slate not sound cool. Like, I think
it sounds great, but I think it's after that. And also, like, you've got the different tiers of things. Like, Ant-Man didn't feel like a superhero film. I know that sounds stupid, but it wasn't like over the top hitting things all the time. And right. I think diversity within that genre is very important to keep it based. And those two like massive companies, I think will kind of work with each other, even though it sounds stupid. I mean, are you going to get an Avengers and a Batman vs Superman in the same year? Probably not, but that's just what I think.
Well, I think we'll be discussing this in 5 years' time, because I don't think there is an oversaturation yet. I think people are saying that because it's just a massive jump to where we were 10 years ago, where there was maybe one a year. Whereas now we're talking about, are we're getting one a month? Like, how often are we going to be getting these things? I think that's when you're going to be starting to talk about oversaturation. But it's a good question, nonetheless.
Very good question.
So the next topic is the box office. Excuse me. So the top 10 of the UK box office this week are the record-breaking Spectre, which has now made a total of £64 million in the UK alone. This week it made 13 million. Hotel Transylvania with 1.1 million this week in second place. Number 3 is Brooklyn with 1 million. Pan is still in the top 5 with 500,000. I know how much you love that film. Burnt is just under 500,000. The Martian is now lost its top 5 place, now down to number 6 with 437,000. 7 is Suffragettes. Number 8 is my film that I'm rooting for, Scout's Guide to Zombie Apocalypse. Number 9 is Paranormal Activity, and number 10 is The Last Witch Hunter. So, Callum, you've seen the list. What stands out?
I can't think what stands out is Kill Your Friends isn't in the top 10. I mean, there's been quite a lot of hype, but it's a very British film. I think it's going to struggle if it gets released in the States. I mean, it's got like all of the like UK cast like very in your face about it. So, but then again, it only opened 170 screens, which is hardly anything.
Yeah.
But like, as it comes to the top 10, Spectre's just completely smashed it. I mean, that's on £63 million in the UK, which is like triple everything else overall on that list.
Yeah,
it's crazy numbers like as a whole.
Now, can you see Spectre dipping heavily in the next couple of weeks, given the word of mouth, or is it because it's Bond? All it has to be is a good film for it to break records, because this isn't the best Bond in the current the Daniel Craig phase. Let's say. I think we can both agree on that, right?
We can't.
You think it's the best Bond?
Out with Daniel Craig, it's between this and Casino Royale. I'm probably the only person who thought Skyfall was I think Skyfall was more cliche than this. But yeah. Interesting. Is that a shock to you?
So where it is a little bit, because it's not the best.
One of the interesting things I was watching yesterday is that Sam Mendes said there wasn't a proper finalized script as they started filming, and I think that's where it struggled. I mean, they literally wrote the third act as they were filming, which I think is where that film was a bit dodgy. But
I think the third act's the best part of the film.
no, it's the best part of the film. But the third act is like it's taken from a different film.
I completely agree.
And it's like a giant like click. So I kind of think that's where the film struggled. But I think it's a great Bond film. I mean, with so many throwbacks, which again is a bad thing and a good thing.
What do you think of Pan remaining in the top 5?
It's made some more money than I thought it was going to make.
Right.
I mean, I don't know why it's done so well this week, because half term was last week or the week before.
Yeah.
Which is a bit odd, but I can see that dropping very much. But one interesting thing is that Burnt opened number 5. I thought that would open higher, personally, aiming for that like middle-aged kind of market.
Yeah.
That's quite surprising. Suffragettes clinging in there.
It's been a very good weekend at the UK box office. Like, there are 3 films that have made over £1 million, which and none of those films were new. Oh, my apologies. Brooklyn was new. Now, sticking with the box office, we'll jump across the pond and talk about the American box office, but in particular Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs has now been, Sony. Is it Sony who released that film? I believe so.
Well, the rights kept getting juggled around. I think Universal ended up selling it to Sony, I think.
Universal.
Universal. Do you know what? Just bully me, Bradley. It's fine.
Well, one of those two. They decided to axe Steve Jobs from 2,000 screens because of its poor performance. To this date, and bearing in mind it's been out for a few weeks now, it's made $16 million, which is what it was predicted to make in its opening weekend. So, kind of, why do you think we're seeing bad things about the Steve Jobs numbers? But what I hear, it's not a particularly bad film. The Bad of Mouth hasn't been bad.
What I've heard is it's been reviewed like very positively. I mean, there's not like one that said it's an awful film. I mean, I'm quite surprised that Danny Boyle isn't a pulling power name. I kind of thought after Sunshine, after 28 weeks, well, 28 days, and then he produced 28 weeks. I kind of thought he was a much bigger director than he's turned out to be in bringing numbers in. I mean, like, the core community has been very excited about Danny Boyle, but it's not really Danny Boyle came in very, very late to the process. So I kind of think that that's maybe where this film struggled, like from hearing about all the drama going on behind the scenes of like no actor till like a couple of weeks before, no director till a couple of weeks before. And it makes a very interesting story why that happened, and I'm not sure we'll ever find out, because I mean the script was amazing. Who wrote the script? It was a very good
Aaron
writer.
Sorkin, who's one of the best writers working today. So you've got
Social Network. He did Newsroom.
Yeah. You've got, like you said, Danny Boyle, who you thought was a massive pull and pay. You've got Aaron Sorkin, who's one of the best writers working today, and you've got a guy that I said on our first episode that Michael Fassbender will bring in box office numbers. I was clearly wrong, right? And that surprises me. But I think the issue is actually the whole subject of the film itself. You've got the Ashton Kutcher, pile of horse poo-poo. That I can't believe it's a poo-poo. You got the Ashton Kutcher Steve Jobs film that completely flopped. That wasn't any good. But do you reckon people just aren't interested in seeing a Steve Jobs film? I mean, could it be as simple as that?
Well, I think they are. I mean, I was watching Clyde video. I mean, they're a great podcast, and you probably know it if you're watching this. And John Campea was saying if it was about the iPhone, that film would have done so much better. I mean, they could have included the iPhone as one of the launches, because the film's about 3 different product launches.
Right.
I mean, and if they included the last one being the iPhone and they marketed it as the iPhone movie, I reckon it would have been a much bigger thing. Kind of like with Facebook. I mean, Facebook was the Facebook movie, not the Mark Zuckerberg movie. And I kind of think it would have, like, marketing wise, it would have pulled in a much better crowd for that. But I do think the fact there's been loads of documentaries and there's been a previous film and Apple have spoken against it have all kind of shot it down when it could have been there. But I'm really hoping that if it gets an Oscar nomination, which it looks like it maybe will get, that it'll get a re-release. And I'm kind of surprised that the UK market didn't wait until February time to re-release it, because I mean that happens lots. I mean, like, all the Oscar films like gets released after, because to get nominated for a BAFTA, you don't have to be in cinemas, unlike in Oscars where you do have to be in cinemas.
Yeah, like American Sniper, for example, because that done wonders in January, didn't it?
Exactly. So I'm kind of surprised they didn't wait for Steve Jobs in the UK to release until then. But I mean, it played at London Film Festival, which is probably why it's opening now. But it's just a massive shame that this isn't getting the traction it was. And I mean, it's not in many screens. I mean, my local Cineworld has 5 screens, and it's not even opening there this weekend, which is a massive disappointment. I mean, when they're showing films, like he named the Malala, or it's documentary. I mean, that's having 3 showings a day, and that isn't even in the top 10. But yeah, Steve Jobs isn't even being like given a shot.
Right.
So I think they're going to struggle in the UK mainly because of the bad bad US numbers, and then the UK cinemas being scared of putting the film on in many screens. But
plus, Spectre's still absolutely nailing it, and that's going to be taking over some extra screens should they become available. But that takes us on to our final part of the show, where we simply leave you with what we're looking forward to for the week. My film is Steve Jobs. If we can find a screening, despite all the negative press about the box office numbers, I'm looking forward to seeing the film, because I've heard that it is like almost like a script writing masterclass, performing masterclass, a directorial masterclass. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Callum, what about yourself? What are you looking forward to seeing this week?
I'm also looking forward to seeing Steve Jobs. I mean, like ever since the trailers have been slated, but I really enjoyed the trailers. I mean, the trailers are a mini film in itself. Have you seen it where there's all the noise and stuff?
I love the trailer. I think the trailers are absolutely incredible.
I mean, seeing that in the cinema, basically hearing the giant rumblings of all the feet on the seats. I mean, that's a perfectly made trailer, so I can't wait for that. And also, I may check out Kill Your Friends, which opened up last weekend. I mean, the reviews have been very mixed, but it seems to be a very good British film. And if you're into your music industry, which is what it's about, it's a kind of comic take on that. I think it'll be a very interesting watch.
Interesting. Well, I might check out Burnt if it's playing, but other than that, nothing really takes my fancy other than Steve Jobs, because like I said, that's a film I'm really looking forward to. So that will do us this episode of the AM Film Podcast. We are going to make this a weekly show, as we promised on episode 1. I've been Brad Evans. You can find me on Twitter, Bradley_J_Evans. Callum, where can people find you?
I'm at Moorin or in Southampton.
They want to come to your house.
If they want to. I mean,
talk
they
to you
can try.
about your Breaking Bad spoilers.
Why would you say? I mean, okay, this isn't a spoiler unless you know what it's a spoiler of.